Hi everyone, welcome to this auction deal analysis case study review where we take you through 8 lots which are being offered at auctions. We take you through how savvy investors analyse those lots, they figure out where the angles, where the opportunities are, they look at where the risks are and how to mitigate them. So I'm joined here by a fantastic panel of experts. There's Piotr Rusinek, author of Before the Hammer Falls. Yes. Bit of an auction expert, bit of a trader, buys and sells stuff at auction, and I think that's a good experience to have because I'm pretty much a buyer at auction. It's always good to have a seller's perspective as well. So Piotr will be throwing in his 2 pennies worth. Basically, all of us have chosen 2 lots that we are going to discuss and take you through in this video. So I'm really excited to hear the 2 lots that Piotr has chosen. I'm also joined by Rod Turner, prolific investor, developer, has bought several properties at auction in the last year, some industrial sites as well that you're looking to convert to residential. So he's always looking to do things out of the box and out of the ordinary. So I'm very excited to hear the lots that he has picked out. And also none other than Jay Howard, co-author of the book Before the Hammer Falls with Piotr, and also auction manager here at Auction House London. We're here at the offices of Auction House London looking at lots specifically in the December 2019 catalogue, and we've got 8 very exciting deals to kind of preview with you. So that's all coming up. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe, like us, because it really helps us out on YouTube. Press that bell icon as well, because we release new content each and every week. And if you subscribe and hit the bell icon, you'll get notified as soon as we upload. Right, let's have a look at these bargains then.
So if we're going to get started then, we'll get started on lot 15. Now this is the December 2019 Auction House catalogue. So on the broadcast episode, this will be being broadcast or going live before the auction, so you can have a look and see what actually happens at the auction. So first lot we're going to talk about is lot 15. Now this is a building made up of 2 flats in London SE6. It's got a guide price of £100,000, end of terrace building, arranged of 2 self-contained studio flats. Both flats are subject to periodic tenancies, producing an income of just over £19,000 per annum. It's freehold. One of the big issues here though is there is an enforcement notice against this property. So that's going to mean something troublesome. Add that to the fact that this has come up in auction maybe 4 or 5 times last.
Well, it was first offered in 2014. I looked up the history, and it sold for 163k with 19k income. So that is already suspicious for a London property. And since then, it was offered about 8 times in the last 5 years.
I think what I want to know is, auctions, you get deals, great deals in auctions, but they're also used by people to offload lemons. So how do you make lemonade out of what I think is a bit of a lemon?
Well,
that's a good question.
I think the key is understanding what this enforcement notice is. Yes. So first thing is to go and have a look at that legal pack.
There's no legal pack available yet.
Okay, well you can contact the council and ask about the enforcement notice there.
Correct.
And one of the things I'm going to assume, and obviously never assume, but for the purpose of this, is that it's been split into 2 flats and they're studios, which shows that this was done under PD, maybe it didn't have the right cycle storage or bin storage to get that PD done. So that could be an issue. So if that did turn out to be the enforcement issue, one thing you could do is turn it back into a single dwelling to get around the space, or look at where you can create that cycle and bin storage if that was the issue. So again, it's just really understanding what that enforcement notice is, because I imagine that enforcement notice is stopping anyone from getting any form of finance on it or even reletting it, because there may be licenses involved in that.
My guess, and again there's no legal pack, and I haven't had the good fortune to read the enforcement notice or have any ganders at the local authority search which would bring up an enforcement notice issue, is the address tells me the old stables is that originally perhaps this wasn't even a dwelling beforehand. So what you'd be looking at potentially is probably converting it back into a stable. Now, interestingly, there are little planning tricks and loopholes when it comes to equestrian use property, where you can go for certain types of planning and do all these interesting things. You'll need to speak to someone far greater in planning than I am, but there appears to be a way around this. Now, the cost involved in retrofitting it back into a stable to then convert it into a residence at a later stage may be folly for the pound, but I mean, it's been on the same tenancy as far as I can see, based on the previous sales history, for at least 4 or 5 years. Yeah. So I would probably take Rod's point that it's probably difficult to relet.
Yeah.
I would say that the finance would either be not forthcoming or very expensive if you were to bridge. There are some bridges that may, most bridges that won't. But if you're looking to park some cash and to own real property asset in SE6 with that income,
and that's good. It's a good income on the cash.
It's a good income on the cash.
Just going back to what we think it is, next door you can see there's obviously a garage. So one thing I would look at is what the use class of next door is, because it's highly likely that is what the use class of that property
previously
was.
Correct.
And then you can start to look at, right, where are the angles there? I've got a sneaky suspicion that it was under that or used as workshop, storage, something like that. They've gone and tried to do a PD app and they've put no cycle or bin storage because there doesn't seem to be anything there. But again, go and have a look into that.
Listen, guys, I don't want to be controversial here, but I'm not seeing this, quite frankly. It seems to me it's likely that it's stables, as you said. If it is stables, then I'm not sure whether there are PD rights for that sort of use.
I don't believe there is, no.
And so they may have got permission to convert it into a dwelling, and the issue here is it's a legal subdivision. The other thing the other two issues that are very worrying is that it's kept on coming back into the auction. So a lot of people have had a crack at this, have failed to get past the enforcement notice issues, and therefore shoved it back in the auction. And the other thing is, even if you were to were to deal with that issue, you've then got the added issue of the periodic tenancy, and these guys having been in there for a long time, and there may be easier fish to fry than this particular deal, particularly with the amount of cash you're going to need to do this, because I can't think of a bridger on hand who would want to do it on those circumstances with the planning. So I'm not getting it, but I would
so
argue that it's a possible lemon.
I definitely
agree, and I'm quite surprised this property is so early on in the catalogue, because this is a perfect property to be at the end of the catalogue where people missed out on a lot. They say, I want to buy something. This looks really good. I want to buy this.
A lovely bit of Lewisham, of course, let's do this.
What a great example from someone that sells in property, understanding those tricks of the trade that people do.
It's just the way people make decisions. I mean, at lot 15, they can still expect to buy lot 20, 25. But at the end of the auction, like, they're just sitting disappointed.
Fantastic.
And they want to buy something. And I actually had some clients who bought a property like that at the end of the auction and then just wanted to resell it after a couple of months.
One of the other things I would do on this is, because it has come up in auction so many times, is go back to those auctions that it's been sold in and have a look at the legal packs from those auctions to see if there's anything on that enforcement notice. That might give some other clues.
By the way, Piotr, you raised the point about it being. Can you just tell our viewers how you found out that it had been at auctions before?
Yeah, definitely. So I covered this on our Facebook Lives. If you guys want to kind of review my Facebook Lives, so I use Essential Information Group portal, and that portal basically gives access to the historical data of properties being offered in auction last 25 years.
Yes.
So that means basically we can see the street history of that street in the auctions, and it shows this property because it's been offered so many times.
Right, so quickly to sum up then, risks we're looking at, obviously it's that enforcement notice is the big one, probably unable to get finance and that periodic tenancy. Opportunities could be to repurpose that back into what it was originally used for in its correct use class, and get an income from that, dependent on the periodic tenancy. So looking at that, it's if you want to park that 100 grand to get that income coming in whilst you look at it, or maybe maybe like Ranjan says, there's better things out there.
Well, the difficulty with a property that's got an enforcement notice, especially one that looks like it's done the rounds for 4 or 5 years, probably means that the enforcement notice is probably frustrated. The way to frustrate it further, if anyone wants to know, you can call me later. No, if you want to frustrate it further, what you can do is you can create 2 titles. So to create 2 leases and then sell the 2 leases off. If you do that, you frustrate the ability to for the council to convert it back into a single dwelling, because there'll be individual leaseholders as well as a freeholder. It's not the right way to do something like that, because even if you try to sell off the separate elements, they will fall under the same restrictions as the building as a whole, in terms of there's still an enforcement notice, and you still have the issues surrounding any planning or lack thereof. The interesting thing about this one, though, for me, is not many people realise this, but the standard fine for an enforcement notice, if it is the type that we think it is about £20,000. So that's a real impactful value. But I
think another thing you will have here is the fact that you can't serve Section 21 notices because there's enforcement notices. And probably you also might be liable for repayment of the rent for the last year, 2 years.
Yes, exactly.
It's the rent repayment.
It's the rent repayment that would be uncomfortable.
Yeah. So let's go around the table then and ask our experts. Piotr, lot 15, deal or no deal for you?
No deal.
Rod, deal or no deal for you?
With what?
Just deal or no deal?
No deal, no deal.
Jay?
No deal, but I think it will probably sell for 120, 140.
Really?
Yeah, because unfortunately it looks not too good to be true. I mean, the note is really very clear. There is an enforcement notice. If you choose not to read that, which is in the very centre of the page to be read and understood, then you'll probably end up like most people who had bought it and then weren't able to complete at previous auctions. It all comes down to being informed.
Yes. And for me, it's a no deal. And that's really part of the point of doing this, because this will sell, and they are uneducated people who will just take a punt, and taking a punt at auction is very, very dangerous.
Great. Okay,
next one.
So next lot, who's up next?
Oh no.
Well, Ranjan was lot 10. Yeah.
Lot number 10, yes. Which one was this? Oh yes, this is an interesting one, I think, because I think what we have seen recently is that London, and particularly central parts of London, have undoubtedly taken a little bit of a dip. They're off their highs, and it does represent a little opportunity to pick up some sizable, well-located assets for much less than they went for just a couple of years ago. And when the bounce back happens, which it will happen as soon as uncertainty is sort of cleared up, the areas that came off the boil fastest will rise quickly after that. So that's fine, that's future. You can't really pay the bills on that sort of thing. But
shall I explain what it is?
It's lot number 10, good point. I forgot, folks on the podcast are not seeing it. Flat 14 is a flat. It's a flat in London N1 Hoxton. And the great thing about it, it's a leasehold flat, but it's quite a large flat. It's on the second floor. It's got 3 bedrooms, plus a reception room, plus a separate kitchen. And
that's of a 4-story, what looks like a 4-story.
Yes, yes, of an attractive looking,
not a bad looking building,
not ugly ex-council looking block. Still plenty of time left on the lease, 102 years left. Now, I'll talk about the risks in a mo. The thing I like about this is that the guided at 375. To get a 3-bedroom flat in N1 Hoxton, which has come off the boil, it's a very, very trendy area. Will always be a nice.
You're right by Shoreditch.
Exactly. Will be a good capital appreciation play, and I don't think you'll have to wait that long, no more than 5 years for that capital appreciation bounce. But in the meantime, it will rent well. 3 separate rooms plus a lounge. You could buy that with a buy-to-let assuming I have to go on a viewing, see whether it's in lettable condition, but you could tie that up with a buy-to-let loan and service that loan based on the rent. The risks are I would need to check the lease and the service charge history to make sure that is not a big effect on cash flow. But even if you converted the reception room into a bedroom, you've got 4 rooms there, you could do it as an HMO, and because as long as you have 1 occupant per room, it's an unlicensed HMO.
Yeah.
So it's in that sweet spot as well. So you can make some cash flow out of it while you're waiting a few years for a bounce back in capital appreciation.
Yeah, and this looks like a ex-council or council-managed building. Possibly usually with those buildings, the service charges are extremely low.
Yeah, I was thinking it doesn't look like a mansion block, and normally when I'm looking at these kind of flats in those kind of areas, it's the mansion blocks that worry me with their service charge and sinking funds and management X, Y, and Zs for every penny they can get. This looks like, I mean, it feels very much like a vanilla investment, but like Ranjan was saying, there are more positives than there are any negatives you could throw at it.
I think the one thing I'd want to just make sure of is, we talked about the service charge, so that's the obvious one. The other one is the ground rent.
Yeah.
How often does that ground rent increase? Because at the moment, a lot of mortgage companies don't like it when the ground rents double, even if it's every 10 years. So that's one thing to just confirm on. And also to understand if there's been any notices of further works that need to be done.
Again, section 21s, which you hear there's sections for every type of property, so it's not just evicting tenants. The section 21 is a notice of works from the freeholder or management company on a leasehold block.
As a rough rule of thumb on the ground rent issue, that's more of a new issue for leases created after 2010. You need to check it out, obviously, but as a general rule of thumb, leases created before 2000, this is 1996, would have been at the £100-200 a year type of level. This was a relatively new fashion of where developers, particularly with new build stuff, have been fleecing people on high ground rents.
But yeah, I really like it, especially like you say, could put the kitchen into the reception room, have 4 bedrooms, let it out even on 1 AST to sharers. The area it's in, it's going to just rent all day long. You're not going to have voids. I really like it.
Well, even if it was on 50%, it would still service a manageable debt on that.
Well, you talked about it being a capital appreciation,
asset,
but actually, I think it'd be a bloody good income generating asset for London.
If you were to run it as Ranjan says, as a mini mo, I
mean, personally, I'd do it as all on 1 AST, 4 sharers to come in. It's easy to get 4 sharers.
Especially in that area.
There's a couple of universities knocking about there as well, isn't there?
I think we'll edit this a bit out because I'm
probably professionally, we're just going to scrap that from everything. Ranjan's found a deal.
Okay, so what have we got up next?
How about?
We didn't do the summary around the table.
Sorry,
deal or no deal? Not 10.
All right. For me personally, no deal.
Depending on price, deal.
Based on Ranjan's suggestion, that works as a deal for me. It wouldn't be the route I would go down, but in the circumstance that you presented, that is a deal.
Yeah. For the right person, it's a deal. For me,
like we were discussing at Baker Street yesterday evening, it has to be not every scenario, not every strategy is for the same person.
I think when I'm asking for the sort of deal, no deal thing, it's not necessarily for you, but is this a deal that would make some money for someone on their strategy? So if someone was doing a buy-to-let strategy and a short-term capital appreciation strategy, it would work. But
I think the opportunities outweigh the risks.
Yes,
that's a good way of looking at it. Okay.
Which one are we on to?
So, Piotr, do you want to do one of your lots?
Yes. So my next lot is I'm just going to check Facebook Live because we seem to have lost connection, and I think it's all right. My next lot is 36. 36 is I'm just checking here. So 36 is a property that I'm actually selling for one of my clients. This is a property that I have. This is a client I've sold before, so they understand how auctions work. But I think I wanted to pick this lot because it's a really good example of how auctions operate. In terms of, you want to sell something, you need to offer it in an attractive price and take a risk of it might be selling at well below its market value. The market value of this HMO is around 325. This is what the HMOs sold for within quarter of a mile of this property, and these are the kind of typical prices in Coventry. This is producing 34. This is fully licensed 6-bedroom HMO, producing £34,000 per annum, and it's guided at £230,000 plus, and it's. So basically, the yield is about 15%.
Yeah, gross. Obviously, there'll be some operational costs.
There'll be some operational costs, but the important thing about this property is that it's let to professional tenants, and that's an important distinction in Coventry, because in Coventry, a lot of student HMOs are struggling because of new build student accommodation blocks. So an HMO that's suitable and attractive to professionals is really good.
So why is he selling? He seems to have got the holy grail of HMOs. They're all let to professionals. He's even let out the garage.
Yeah, that's right. So the reason why he is basically selling is he wants to raise capital, and that's why he is repurposing his portfolio, and he's investing in different things. So some of the HMOs basically are good, but they're just suitable for different person.
I think you made a really, really good distinction there, because when I looked at this before you had said that, my immediate thought was, oh no, another HMO in Coventry that's so sort of oversupplied with HMOs for the student population, with all these new build developments up, and I know HMOs for students are struggling there, but obviously going for that different tenant type is great. I think this would suit someone who's already got an HMO business with professionals, because it is a lot of work and you are competing. Although there's a lot of student HMOs out there, what's going to happen is when the students go into these student-built apartments, then all these other HMOs are going to start to be repurposed to professionals. So again, it's still going to create quite a bit of competition. So I think it's going to suit someone who's willing to get their hands dirty on the management front, and it will take quite a bit of managing in that. So if you've got someone with an existing portfolio there, I think it will suit them well.
So I think on the management front, actually, I was quite pleased with the fact that the tenants in this property, they've been there for 2 or 3 years. So there's actually quite a low turnover, and the property is already managed by a local agent. So in that sense, it seems like a fairly low maintenance property. And I think what's good about this, I just sold last month. I sold a 13-bed HMO in Birmingham. That's a bit of a beast, and with a 6-bed HMO, that is very manageable for a lot of people. It's a low entry level to an HMO.
Your rooms aren't competing with your own rooms.
That's right. Yeah.
So a lot of people that I talk to come to Baker Street, they get into HMOs, but they buy properties and they convert them themselves to HMO, make their own HMOs, if you like. I just wanted to ask you, Jay, I mean, what sort of people tend to buy a ready-made HMO as opposed to, because most of the people I meet seem to make them themselves.
Yeah, so I think you normally have 2 classes, and you had Mike Frisbee chairing the little mini panel we had yesterday evening, and he's a very big fan of going in and remodelling and repurposing it for his own benefit. There are a lot of people who may have gone on HMO courses or got HMO experience, this, that and the other, but don't really have any building or structural technical experience or skills. So in that respect, those are the kind of investors that will come in, see the income, understand how an HMO works, and then either take over the management and income and the asset, which makes a lot of sense for those individuals. You've built out a couple of HMOs as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
But I mean, from Rod's perspective, you may want to go in somewhere, instead of having a ready-made hot asset, going in and...
I mean, I always like to add value, because I think it makes the whole investment a lot safer. Although it's a lot of effort, and some people don't have the time and effort to do that. If you don't have the time and effort to do that, don't buy an HMO, because it's time and effort intensive, regardless of whether you've got a management company. So for me, I just don't get it. I don't get why someone would want an existing HMO, I get the yields can be attractive, but actually once you start going over that 5-10 year period, once you look at voids, maintenance, turnover, all those operational expenses, it does start to creep up a little bit. So
I guess it always comes down to like how well systemised you are and what kind of support and services you have in place. But for me, I don't do HMOs. I've always been quite honest about that. Residential tenants is not my flavour, but if it is, something like this is going to be well up your street.
Yeah, like I said, if you've got an existing operation, you're managing your own HMOs in that area for professionals, then it can suit you because it's a nice bolt-on.
That's
and it
what
can
I
fit
don't
in.
get, because but everything's worth something at a price.
Yeah.
But the folks who are systemised, they have staff in place and they're in this area and they've got a well-oiled machine for running HMOs. They've also got systemised acquiring sites and converting them into HMOs.
I don't know if everyone has. I think you've got a lot of companies that are more the management side and just want to bolster it on, especially if they're looking to then sell that management company and things like that in the future, and they're looking at, right, let's just increase the balance sheet so we can shift it on in the future. But yeah,
and you remember there's a lot of people that see HMOs as a good return on investment, and for an armchair investor style person, especially if they can get it fully managed at a price, of course. It makes sense.
What price you can get it at,
yeah. But I mean, on a 15%, it's CV2, which we can assume is close to the city centre based on postcode. Professional let, majority of tenants have been there 2 to 3 years. Inside there's a couple of pictures in the catalogue. There's a couple more online. Looks there or thereabouts.
I think it looks low risk in terms of what's going to come to sort of bite you in the backside.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just too labour intensive, I think, to be a deal for the operational front, and with the competition coming in that area.
I think again, for the right person who maybe have 5 or 6 or 10 different HMOs in the area, they just basically buying a property that's based on very much bricks and mortar value, and then they basically are buying an income producing asset that they just add to their existing system portfolio and works.
No, that is possibly true. I think it'll go to, thinking about my own past, I have looked at properties which are already multi-let, but they're always down the road from something we've already got, or in a street where we've already got two. So
and if you know there's demand there, and you're getting
never be out on a limb.
Yeah.
It just adds easily to your operational management of what you've already got. So this will possibly go to someone who's a local player, and there are lots of local players in this West Midlands area.
So lot 36, deal or no deal, Ranjan?
Deal for a local player who's already operating in that area, HMOs. At the right price, yeah.
Deal or no deal, Jay?
I'd say deal for the same reason, and maybe even armchair investor as well. I'll chuck them in the mix.
I'm going to say no deal.
Okay, I'm going to say a deal, definitely at the right price for the right person.
Okay. What's the next lot then? So
it's got to be my turn by now, isn't it? 38. Give me lot 38.
Fantastic. This is a great lot.
Whoa!
I know, it's a beast. It's a beast. I mean, this was full disclosure. This was in the last auction, so this was in the September auction. But it was in the September auction as 2 separate lots.
Yes.
And I will tell you why I think that was a mistake. So describe the lot. So this is 146 to 152 London Road in Grays. It's lot number 38. The guide price is 1.15 million. It is a substantial, if you can use that word, mixed-use investment. So to the front, so the road frontage, you've got what looks to be 4 shops with flats above.
Yeah, it looks like a nice parade of shops.
Nice parade of shops. So it's unfortunately it's not all 5 shops in the parade. The one is owned separately, but you have uninterrupted 4 shops in a row, and then you have what can only be described as massive rearage. which has got storage containers and existing buildings on there and bits and pieces like that.
It's a very nice sized plot, I think.
It's got healthy depth and girth and all that fun stuff that we like to see.
From your rearage.
From the rearage. I'm glad we're all adults here. Remember, no one's allowed to be funnier than Ranjan. You'll be ruined. You'll leave this office and no one will ever deal with you again. So I picked this because it is probably one of the most underperforming assets in the catalogue. Now, I would pick that as an absolute positive. I think, especially if you're a value-add investor, I very much would hang my hat on that. I know Rod's a big fan, Piotr as well. Ranjan's more of a buy-hold, but doesn't mind buying at a discount, who would? But this one here is very interesting. So the shops are all let on a licence, which basically means they'll come and go, and yeah.
So it's less secure for a lender.
Less secure for a lender, but also
lower value.
which means technically lower value. But it means that you're probably not getting full market rent for it either.
I'll make a point on this issue later on, but continue.
I've heard. I know the license issue. We know the same solicitors. It's fine. But no. So that's kind of what these. You were interested in that Harrow Road before, weren't you? It was on licenses.
Yes.
Yes. So similar situation, but that was an auction a good year and a bit ago. But what I like about this is, so when I said it was in last month's auction, the reason I didn't think it did well is because they'd separated the lots out. I don't think that would be the best way to handle this site and potential development. I think you would want to be the main interest holder of the front in order to make sure any development that you're putting into the rear, you're not an objector. So if you were to sell off the front to a separate party, they may object to right to light for their flats and all these different things. Whereas if you're in control of that whole site, you have a greater degree of control over what it is that you're able to do. I think it's massively underlet, so it means it has great potential for capital uplift. It'll be valued on a commercial basis. I think the development there looks more than likely. I think they went in and got some advice for 7 residential flats to the rear. They've talked about it, and there's a pretty little picture and all that fun stuff.
No planning. But
no planning.
They've made it clear that they've done some work on that.
Whether it's feasibility or whatever it may be. I mean, it's a step in the right direction. I wouldn't hang too much hope value on it. And even if you don't, the buildings to the rear, you could have a fair bit of fun with that.
I just think, I love this lot. I think there's so much opportunity, and I think the downsides are covered as well.
Yeah.
You've already got an existing income of 78 grand against a 1.15 million site.
With some vacant units.
With vacant units, with underperforming units that can be repurposed. Even looking at the flats above the shops, none of them have had the lofts done. You can increase the scope of those and increase the rents there. There is just so much opportunity, I think, to add value to this site with so little downside.
Yeah.
I think it's a great one.
I think the opportunities here are because you've got 4 units on the ground floor and they're on the corner, and there it's London Road seems like a main road in Greyish. Outside, put someone like Tesco or a sort of a more of a chain.
So just like knock through and do like give them 3 of the 4 units or the whole 4.
Space, increase the income, increase the covenant. And then in terms of the rear, obviously repurpose. Maybe there could be some permitted developments on the upper floors because they're already above the A1 units. Maybe there could be some A1 whatever at the back. That's possible. It's not.
Well, I think they're existing flats, aren't they, above the shops? And you can. There's space to go in.
Grays is a up and coming area. The other thing that's useful for people to know is that. If you look at the picture, the picture in the catalogue, you can see that there's plenty of newer buildings and housing developments in the immediate vicinity right behind, and that shows that people are building and investing in the area. And on the very positive
on the far left-hand side of the main image. So if anyone goes onto Auction House London's website or has a copy of the catalogue, you can see like a light bricked walled area to the far left-hand side of the picture. That is a new build development there as well. I'd say completed in the last 24 to 36 months.
I was going to make a comment about the licenses on these commercial units. I think it's a good thing, because what that does is it gives the purchaser the freedom to chuck people out to do what they want with the site. Now, one opportunity that may
on that thing that gives people freedom. I think it only gives people freedom if those licenses are correctly set up, because with any commercial license you need to set it up in a way that the tenant gives up the right to the Landlord-Tenant Act protection.
Yes.
And for that they need to be given notice before that lease is created.
Yes.
And then they need to sign that notice in the presence of the solicitor to be witnessed, and only then that license is valid. So if that license was signed without all those things...
But that is a lease outside the Act. This says it's a license.
Yeah, but there's not such things as a license with commercial tenants if they haven't been served notices.
Yes.
If they were served notices that are correct, they're perfect, it's a licenses. But if they weren't served proper correct notices, those licenses are essentially leases inside the Act.
That's brilliant.
Let's assume, though, because we haven't seen the legal pack, that the licenses were... Because I would assume, it has to be... Everything I'm assuming needs to be checked out, obviously. But I would assume that the reason someone did licenses is so that they could have vacant possession of the site.
That's right.
But a possible angle here is also... Okay, you've got the development angle in the back, great. But get PD for flat conversion above and behind the existing retail unit. So because under PD you can get 2 flats above a shop, and you can get 1 flat behind. Once you've established that principle for 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 12 flats. Once you've established under PD that you can have 12 flats there, then you can go on for planning to knock that whole thing down
and come up with
and build 12 flats, which are much better configured. And then, of course, once you've got that, you can go for another floor and all of that. So this is a step-by-step game.
Right.
You'll never get a hole in one.
It's
several shots to get the ball in the
on your point,
hole.
it's again a detail, but I think it's an important detail. And I looked at this because I had the same thinking with another property that was similar to this, that you can do 2 flats above a 1 shop, but you can only do that if there's no existing flat above the shop already.
So the next lot is lot number 23. This is Sunny Hill Road in Streatham, London, SW16. It's a commercial and residential investment producing £27,800 per year. It's freehold, so on the ground floor we've got a Caribbean restaurant, and then on the first floor I believe it's a 1-bed flat. First thing I notice about this is just looking at the picture. Sorry, the guide price is 400,000. First thing I notice looking at the image of this is that
Caribbean.
Well, there is that, but also that there's the ridge height of the neighbouring properties are a storey higher, and also it looks as though you could also go 1 storey above that as well by putting a loft on. So that would be something I'd want to straight away look to explore. The other thing is the ground floor shop. It's just been let on a 15-year lease earlier this year with 5 yearly reviews at £17,000, which is a pretty good rent actually. Pretty good covenant there. So I just want to check about any break clauses and just check that lease. But on the face of it, it looks pretty healthy and pretty strong. And obviously we've got 1-bed flat let only in August this year, £900 per calendar month. So again, it's looking at what we can put on top. A bit like the last lot, you're covering you're being able to service your debt from day one, and then you've got that value add of being able to put something on top. It's not a lot that I think is going to set the world on fire, but at the same time, it's fairly low risk in my book.
It's in an area I'm a fan of. It's close to
It is in an area I'm a fan of. I've got some stuff in Streatham, so and it's had huge amounts of regeneration recently. So it's I say up and coming. It's kind of up and come already, but it's a good area. I like it.
So my thoughts on this property, like when I did that Facebook Live on this on Tuesday, is there's a flat there existing. It's about 500 square feet.
It's fairly decent size. We saw that from EPC. In terms of the commercial property, we looked at the Google Street View, and Google Street View was from April this year, and it's being shown as a burger kitchen. So I think the tenants changed there.
From April,
this is a new tenant, so I'm just going to be curious how they're going to perform that lease, because the lease might be long, but at the same time, it's have they proven the business? Is it a new business? What is the covenant behind this lease? And then another thing is so about the flat might be about 250. That's if you do it up beautifully, nicely, that's about 250. And then the shop downstairs, it's based on income, about 200, 225.
Yep.
So you get 450 of the value from that property. So really the juice in it is the development, and the development is a very speculative thing, because I mean it's not that speculative, but there's no planning on this yet. There's possible planning. It looks likely. But what is it that you will need to do to actually get this planning on? So
I think for me, the development is icing on the cake.
You already have proposed drawings in there.
Doodles. The likelihood is that this is going to be a permitted development in not so long future. But and that's fine. But I think it should be regarded as icing on the cake. I share your concerns, but I think there's a little bit of silver lining there. The problem with commercial property is it's a bit like with residential property. Who are the tenants? You know, if someone's an Uber driver as opposed to someone who's an executive or whatever, it's a different proposition. This is a brand new business. Yes, they've taken a lease. It's not a chain. It's an unknown restaurant, and these sort of unknown restaurants either make it in 6 months or they don't. They can run into huge problems. But on the plus side, this was re-let in April of 2019, which is a time when there's a huge amount of uncertainty in commercial retail letting space. And that says to me that this is an area where there's plenty of occupier demand. If you're re-letting the unit, so it's one thing, yes, you have to look at the business, that's the commercial occupier. And if they're a little bit flaky and you're a little bit worried about them staying, then what underpins that is the lettability of the area. If the area has high occupier demand, then you should be able to, swap them out and get someone else in, which kind of de-risks the individual tenant, if you like.
I mean, if you take Piotr's point that he was looking at the street view and it was dated, when was the street view?
April 2019.
So if you can see that it was previously burger something or other, and then this license
within 2 weeks.
Within 2 weeks they've got this in, and it looks like, it looks like they've done a little bit of work to it. They've obviously added value to the unit in and of itself. I would agree with Ranjan's point that it may not be the best in terms of covenant level, but the fact that there is clearly a demand for the commercial space, I would be quite comfortable with that. And
it's A3, which is hard to get, which attracts a little bit of a premium.
I think, like anything, you go and look at the lease, you look at who the covenant is, and you determine that. But
and you go and taste the food.
Yeah.
I mean, when I buy a shop that's went out to a restaurant, I actually go in and I'll order something off the menu, see what the service is like, and you can see whether it's going to last. You get a feel whether it's going to last.
I tested the shisha restaurant once.
In regards to kind of the development angle as well, I don't feel it's as speculative as maybe some of you guys do. Looking at what's here, even on the one next door, which is a story higher, that can still go one more story higher, even under PD. So from this, you can get that precedent already for another, not one, but probably 2 stories. So I would be pretty confident in that. And like we say, we're covering that downside by just having a bog standard vanilla kind of income coming in. It's not the best yield in the world, it's not the worst yield in the world.
So do you not think those windows there on the side might have some...
Not here, no, because that's at this level.
Yeah.
And you're going up there, there's no windows on that roof. Sorry, we're looking at, for those listening on the podcast, we're just looking at the image of this and the neighbouring property, which is not adjoining, but there it looks like an alleyway in between.
I'd like to see how deep that commercial unit goes back. I'd like to know who has the access and control over that, what looks to be an alleyway there.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to see how much that space is being utilised.
Yeah.
It could be repurposed for a small little studio to the rear. But again, that is probably far more speculative than anything else we discussed in this.
Yeah,
slide.
obviously,
Yeah.
you need to go and have a look at it. You need to go and have a look at sort of
planning
look at
and
the plans and things like that. Yeah.
So deal, no deal?
Deal for me.
I'll chuck in a deal for that, yeah.
Ranjan?
I'm not sure.
You need that taste that chicken in that.
Go get some saltfish and a key and we'll figure out whether it's something we really want to invest in.
I think for me at the guide price it's a deal. Anything above the guide price, maybe 5-10k. That's it. Not much more.
So now, guys, you know his upper limit. Just a penny more, we'll get it on the day.
Next one. So we do 14.
Yeah, that's Ranjan's one. You'll do
Yeah.
14.
No, right, it's a nice little commercial, this one. Lot 14 is a shop in Croydon, Surrey. It's a corner shop. You get the whole freehold. So the upper parts have been sold off on long leases or what have you. But what you've got is a corner. It seems it's a busy junction. It's on a traffic light. It's on a busy sort of road and all the rest of it. The Purley Way, 335 Purley Way. So you know it's a massive long main road. CR0, which is pretty much banging the Croydon area. Now, what I like about this is you're buying the freehold and you're just buying so you have full control and you're just buying the shop, so you don't have to worry about any of the residential elements and what to do with those. It is vacant. The guide price is 65 grand. You're getting 333 square foot of space. Now, what I know is in the M25, shops which let for less than 8-9k a year are exceptionally rare, especially corner plots. People love corner plots because they have window frontage that people can see. They're great for service sector businesses because when you look at a retail and it's empty, who can you imagine there? You know, if you've got plenty of window space, then you could see some service sector business such as a hair salon or a nail bar or one of these sort of service type providers, or even a small coffee shop occupying that space, benefiting from the footfall and benefiting from the window frontage that people can look in and see what's happening.
Just for advertising.
That's got a state agency office written all over it, hasn't it?
Maybe 10 years ago, but they're online now. But no, seriously though, I mean, it's 65k. The uncertainty here is that someone's got to take a punt in their ability to rent this out. But as soon as you've got a tenant, you've added value. And I can't believe that this property will let for less than 10k a year. So if you are picking it up for guide or a little bit more, you secure a tenant at that sort of 10k level or more, and you get them in on a, I mean, with these sort of shops, it's quite hard to get people to commit to 10 years. It will typically be a 5-year lease.
Yeah, 5 to 7
and the yield will be a little bit, valuation will be a little bit higher than say with a 10-year lease. But it would still value up around about the 7.5% level, which is a very, very quick profit for the sake of putting a tenant in a corner shop, because corner shops are rare.
Yeah.
You know, middle shops are to a penny.
And what a great opportunity for an owner-occupier as well.
Yes, that will be your biggest competition in the room, always.
Right. And if
small SME business provider who's local to the area.
If I'm local to the area and we're leasing a premises and we want our own, it's not a huge barrier to entry to get in there. It's going to be a lot less for mortgage costs than probably what you're renting. You're paying that down over a period of time. I think it's a great opportunity for someone, for an owner-occupier.
Yeah, I agree. How about we do a joint venture? Like you guys cover the purchase price, I cover the stamp duty.
I'll find the tenant.
What I like about this one is that there is going to commercial stamp duty, which on this is going to be nothing, which is lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if you're bold and you don't care about the people behind, you can put on a floor.
Now that is ambitious.
I don't know whether that would happen.
I mean, it would have to be one of those glass, like the whole
The only thing I'm thinking, what you could do, maybe put a big advertising hoarding board on stilts, so you can go out the window and have enough above, maybe.
That'd be interesting to see that application for planning, wouldn't it, on the high street like that?
Like just to kind of
fundamentally, it's a brilliant opportunity.
There is nothing above it, but
Yeah.
but behind it there are flats which windows come directly onto the roof of this property, so it'll be very difficult to put anything
That
on
was
that.
just a joke. But the other thing I will say, when we let out retail, there is price per square foot in an area, but there's always a premium for a corner plot, for the frontage and the extra footfall and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at this one, a price per square foot, what is it going to be? Say 80k for this property, divided by 333, £240 per square foot for a freehold property.
On a main road.
On a main road.
Okay, sorry,
on a corner.
It's Croydon, so I call it London-ish.
Yeah.
That is good.
Is there potential for PD?
I don't think
No.
so.
No.
Not with the neighbouring properties on either side, and the fact it's a landmark position. I don't think so.
But it's a shop.
Yeah, but it's where it is. It suits commercial, I think.
The other thing that I think,
but I'm just like messing
You're
with
playing
you.
the devil's advocate. Yeah?
So what are the risks?
Just to add to this is a cracking thing for people looking at putting something in their SAS, because one of the big problems with SASs and pension investing is that you can only invest in commercial property, and it takes many years to build a cash pot until you can get something sizable in your pension that you can actually make an investment. And this is a great starter.
Very few bars to entry on this one. Stamp duty included if you're a SAS or SIP investor.
But that could be a good and bad.
A good and bad.
It can push up the competition and push up the price.
But again,
I think
it's a vacant asset, so a lot of people will, especially at that kind of lower level, with low bar.
The trick is, the strategy that I advocate, and this is a bit of a freebie from my sort of courses and stuff, you buy this in your company, you get the tenant in, and then you flip it to your SAS. At the under stamp duty level, you don't pay the stamp duty, and you've basically extracted money from your company to contribute to your SAS in the first place, and then your SAS pays it back to you when you flip it to your own pension.
So there
it's
you
a little
go.
bit of a circular.
Ranjan has taught you how to do a legal Ponzi scheme.
And now this is going to sell for 130. I'm sure the vendor will be very happy and will send you a bottle of wine or something.
So,
A case, come on.
deal or no deal then, Ranjan?
Deal, I don't think it's too bad.
Deal. Good. So lot 3 is my next pick. It's 84B Brook Mill Road in Lewisham, SE8. Guide is 300,000. This is a ground and lower ground floor 2-bedroom maisonette offered with vacant possession. It looks rather tidy. It is in the St John's Conservation Area. The basement was pre-existing to the building, and they got permission to convert that into a habitable room. So the basement is now the master bedroom, which I understand has light wells through its own little rear courtyard garden. I picked this one out just because it's an interest lot. It looks quite attractive. It's close to transport. It's in a fairly accessible part of London. There's 2 or 3 stations within, fairly easy walk. It's a maisonette, so it's over 2 floors.
And got its own entrance.
It's got its own separate entrance. It's got its own private courtyard garden, which looks a little bit like the secret garden. I quite like it. It comes across. It has that very distinct smell of owner-occupier seller, who's not had very much luck with open market estate agents. And I think when this was last on the market, it was on at around the 450 mark. So this represents a marked discount to estate agents' perceived market value, whether that is something to hold a bias to or a value in.
How would you make money from this?
You mercenary,
This for me is a very easy hold and rent. I think it's Lewisham, it's SE8. The capital value would increase short to mid-term. When I mean short, I mean in the next 24 months, mid-term to maybe up to 50 months, so 2 to 6 years. I think it will do quite well. And in the interim, you've got something in a nice area which will be doing more than servicing the debt. I think the rental on that would be at least 15, 14, 15.
So there's no development potential. There's straightforward buy-to-let,
straightforward
single
buy-to-let.
family let, obviously. It's not multi-let or anything like that.
Very vanilla. I quite like
I think this is kind of like a property where a child would buy this because parents are giving them the money, and then they would just like stay there, and they're buying maybe 20, 30, 40,000 pounds below what they would buy through an estate agent. I don't think none of us here would pick this up as an interesting lot.
I think it's one for an owner-occupier to buy and get a nice discount on market rate.
It's
but
good.
It does show that the auctions does have that range.
And it looks like a very lovely flat.
It's a nice one, and it's got this interesting features, and I think that's what attracts people to it.
I think
price with features, and then suddenly people go crazy because nothing like that they can find in another 5 years.
Yeah,
and that's why we don't want it. It's too nice. We want, we want it to be thinking of cat's piss, damp on the walls,
windows,
ceiling wallpaper, broken windows,
missing tiles on the roof.
Yeah, all of that. That's what we get excited by, really.
Yeah. Cat piss. So, any more thoughts on this one then?
I wouldn't say it was a deal. I just like to point out it's interesting. It shows it's clearly an owner-occupier seller. It's clearly going to be an owner-occupier buyer, and that just gives you the idea of what the auctions are capable of, really.
So, deal or no deal?
No deal.
No deal for me, but I think it'll be an interesting watch, and what I would like to monitor from this, because it's an indicator of the market. You see, when you get, this is an A1 property, which is typically going to go to a owner-occupier. When the market's buoyant and at its peak, you find the differential between what this type of property goes for in auction to what it goes for with an estate agent. Very, very minimal, within 5-6% sometimes. Now, it'll be interesting to see how much differential this one sells for in the auction as opposed to in an estate agent. My guess it would be 20-25%, which would be an indicator of the market as it is now. I don't know what you think about that.
But I think it's very difficult to understand what it would sell for in an estate agent, because I want to see if it has been put on the market with estate agents, because I'd imagine it probably has, and they couldn't sell it.
So how about we do a bet? £5 from everyone.
Okay.
And then we'll pick what it's going to sell for.
Okay. I'm going to go for 320. 320.
Rod, 320k.
Actually, no, sorry, 335. I just realised what the reserve would be.
335.
Thank God someone did.
Alright, 335 from Rod. Ranjan?
I think it might go. I think that it won't sell in the room when the hammer goes down, and it will sell after. For probably about
for an undisclosed amount.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to disclose it privately, but just for the benefit of the £5 bet. But
320ish. But I think it would be unlikely to sell in the room. It'll go after. That would be my bet.
Ranjan after 320J.
I'm going balls deep on this one, guys.
365?
No, I'm going 350, a tidy 350.
350.
I think it's true, because like you said, when the market's down, you don't get people coming to auctions who are owner-occupiers to buy.
They can get deals in the open market by putting their offers out.
I think that's a really good point. Okay.
Alright, and me.
Sorry,
I'm with Ranjan. It's not going to sell, and it's going to sell after the auction. But it's going to sell for 305.
305, yeah. Okay.
Ooh, ultra conservative there.
Right. Who has got the next lot?
Yes. Who's next, Piotr?
So it's me, and I picked up like a lot that we don't really. It's not a usual auction lot. 29.
I know a fair bit about this one.
It's a lot in Littleborough in Lancashire, OL15.
Oh, care home.
It's a care home. It's being sold by order of fixed charge receivers. The guide price is £2,650,000 plus, and the care home is a new build care home providing 57 ensuite rooms with lift access and 12 car parking spaces. And it seems like it's built in the middle of like a field or somewhere, like in an area of like
it
some.
looks like a nice building.
It looks like a nice building. It is new
You've
build.
got the train station, literally, if you look on the far left-hand side of that picture, you could probably look over a couple of hedges and that's a train station. It's
Really,
one of those
yeah.
level crossing train stations.
Oh, okay.
You've got close transport links there. This was part of a larger development, so you may see a little development sign here. So on the right-hand side of that picture was a small development of terraced and then terraced houses. And this was all done to the rear of a public house, which I think is still open, and there's a couple of commercial units. But if you go onto the main road, it's a big residential area.
Who do you think this is an opportunity for?
Existing care home.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
it has to be.
Or a specialist housing provider. So to
Yes.
maybe repurpose into some sort of.
But that's
other
be
type
subject to planning, which would be, it's often difficult to get because then you have to convince the council that there's no demand for a care facility.
Well, actually, if they are a
vacant.
specialist provider, then they would probably have an agreement or get a license from the council for a variation while they're using it for that purpose, rather than changing the use in time.
It's interesting about who it's being sold by as well. So it's being sold by the fixed charge receivers. So it's trying to understand what happened there. Was it as the developer? Did the developer go into trouble, or did they sell it on and someone then wasn't able to make it work? What happened there?
It's interesting.
That.
It's interesting, and I want to just quickly about a lot I was reviewing actually yesterday. It was a row of 6 terrace houses in Kent, and it was being sold by countrywide property managers, which basically means I thought it's a repossession. So, and it seems like a very attractive property because it was being sold at 1.1 guide, and the properties are worth easily 1.8. So it looked very interesting. It looks new built as well. So when I looked into this and I called some agents, they actually told me that this property was bought by the insurers. And the insurers basically had to.
So were these new build houses?
New build houses.
So were they bought by the NHBC?
Yeah.
Which basically tells me there's some form of subsidence.
That is the case. Yeah. So I wonder if in here it's a financial issue as well, or if it might be some other issues.
I would be looking at this. To buy and line up a care operator to take a long lease, maybe a 30-year lease, and ideally I'd want an operator that's backed by the government. So if you're looking at, say, charities, things like that are on a compass contract, so it's all underwritten by the government, so if that charity or organisation goes bust, they reappoint someone else. Because then you're starting to look at securitised income, which is securitised by the government, which is savers' houses, and then you can look at doing some interesting things by then starting to sell off the income streams and things like that. That
is a good angle. I think the saving grace for this one is the modern building. A lot of these care homes are running into trouble because the building is uneconomical.
Well, it's because you've got the CQC, which is the Care Quality Commission, has come in, and a lot of them, like you say, are unfit for modern day purpose. So this one's clearly been built. One thing I'd want to check is, has it been signed off by CQC? Because that could be another reason why maybe something hasn't already got in there. Assuming you can get CQC in there and they're happy with it, and to be honest, I'm sure if it wasn't, it would be fairly easy fixes from what it looks like. And then get that covenant in, that would be great, or have an operator buy it.
I think the key is to get behind the story of why it's in fixed charge receivers. So has it gone by a existing operator? Because there are a lot at the moment. I mean, I know you'd think the care home industry should be booming, but a lot of the private operators are in serious trouble because of the cost of running that operation. Even at £1,000 a week income, the sheer cost of keeping it all staffed adequately is a big issue for these guys.
I've seen a couple of other pictures, because there's one or two more online. It looks like it has never been used. I think the development finished late 2017, early 2018, so it's been sitting gathering dust.
Maybe it was a case that they had an operator lined up and one of these operators went into trouble.
Yeah.
So they
I mean, this is X number of miles away from Leeds to the east, and X number of miles away from Manchester to the south and east.
That may well be the story, because there have been some high-profile care providers that have gone to the wall in the last couple of years, and this could be one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you...
It's just north of Rochdale.
I think if you've got contacts within that industry, you've got care operators that are ready and looking for sites, I think if you can get these moving parts into play, it's going to be a fantastic deal for someone. It just depends on whether you are someone in that.
But I think the risks in this one, like with previous properties, we are looking at mostly commercial properties that are already producing income. This is not producing income, and it's a big risk because you need to put that money up front, and then you need to somehow find.
I think the key is to line up that covenant and get it in there within the time frame of completion. And I think to do that realistically on an auction property, and I haven't read where
in December,
and when the completion date is, I think that's going to be very, very tricky. So I think it really requires an operator or someone who is very in the industry to.
Who brought this to the table?
I did.
It's not bad. You should put it together, buy it, rent it out to an operator on a 30-year lease, and then when they hand it back to you in 30, 40 years' time, turn it into a care home for retired property investors. 24/7 networking.
Partners in Property Retirement Centre. We'll have a whole. This looks like a beautiful place for them. Yeah, this is like I can see the round tables around here. There's about 8, so we can squeeze 100 people in there.
And Jay will be speaking at the first event.
So, deal or no deal?
And for someone, it will be a deal. For someone with deep pockets and vision.
I look at these sort of premises, and when I like to when I go to auctions, interesting lots, I go up and talk to the person who's won it, and just to find out what the backstory is. And when I see stuff like this, invariably it goes to someone who is in that business. Yeah. Because for someone who's in that business to buy this ready-made is just I see this all the time with restaurants. They're all done up, and they're up for sale at auction, and someone with a restaurant in the neighbouring town just buys it because it's so simple for them to change the sign and get going. They're the ones that are going to make maximum out of this, so it's a deal for those guys.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed. For Rod's avatar, it's a perfect deal.
If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you're not a subscriber, what are you waiting for? Subscribe, hit the bell icon. As soon as we upload, we'll let you know. And enjoy these. They're all dedicated to helping you be more successful in property. Happy investing!